Greetings, Elder Blacklight here. Now this is a brother named General Baker, one of the founding members of Drum here in Detroit, Michigan. Drum is a black organization that was revolutionaries in the automotive companies here in Motown. We got General Motors, Fords, and Chryslers. And these brothers, they were great coordinators of a change in securing brothers' position at these auto factories. The point I want to make clearly is that Seti and young Pharaoh, they talk about elders like a dog, but they haven't come nowhere close to being revolutionaries. They ain't doing nothing but pimping and talking loud and saying nothing. So we want to let you hear this brother talk about some of the times where some badass revolutionary brothers were rising above emotions and doing their thing, like a god would do it. So we want you to take a listen. General Baker.
Into a social forum for a week downtown Detroit, and they selected Drum as the main struggle they wanted to promote, and that's the social forum poster right there. What is the Drum slate that I'll talk about in a few minutes. But this 1967 rebellion, and I think the definitive work on the 1967 rebellion is a book called Violence in the Model Cities by Seti. And it's a Bible on the rebellion. And anybody that want to know anything about the rebellion need to read Seti. It's an excellent piece. But he talks about how the rebellion broke out. The rebellion started like all rebellions across the country started in the 60s. Usually a battle between the police department and the black community. Always the same situation. Every city you want to look into that had an explosion exploded the same way. To give you an example, the 1966 rebellion in Detroit that we had on Kercheval in Pennsylvania was started pretty much because anybody got a real history of Detroit. You know about the Big Four. We had the Big Four, which was 4 big white police officers that rode in a big 4-door DeSoto. They used to ride around intimidating the black community all the time. We call them the Big Four. Well, the Big Four rode around the corner on Pennsylvania, as usual, and there's a group of about 6 blacks on the corner. They holler out, "Go home." Well, the guys on the corner say, "You go home. We already at home." So the police say, "Well, don't be here when we get back." People on the corner say, "Don't leave. We ain't going to wait for you to come back. Come on." It's right away, and they come back with 5 other carloads of police, and they jump out and the fight starts, and it's sprayed. That's the way Kercheval began, and they call out the tactical mobile unit, and people and the neighborhood rises up, and the police kowtow everybody back in place. Same thing happened in 67, but 67 was different because in 67 they raided a blind pig that had 150 people in it, and it was on 12th Street, not on the east side. Now, I want to dispel some of this notion about a blind pig. Most people know what blind pigs are, don't they? Well, I don't know. I talk to young people a lot of times that don't know much about some of these things. But, at that time, when you worked inside the auto plant, we were working 12/7. The afternoon shift used to start at 5. We didn't get off till 3 o'clock in the morning. And at all the bars and things in the city of Detroit closed at 2. So When you got off work at 3 o'clock in the morning, you had to get a drink somewhere, and almost every block in most of the neighborhoods had a blind pig or after-hours joint, however you want to call it, that was open and available. And we used to go there regularly. I was working afternoon shift. There's no way I was going home after making all them cars all day long at 3 o'clock without getting a drink. And so you would go to these blind pigs, and they were just actually a part of the neighborhood. Even though they weren't legal, they didn't have no liquor with a label on it. All the liquor they had was homebrew they had made in the bathtub, and moonshine that they had made, fried some chicken, and put some music on, and you got an after-hour joint. And we used to go to these places every weekend, especially on Friday and Saturday night. That was part of the culture of our life. And everybody knew it. The plants knew it. The police knew it. Everybody, profited from these little blind pigs. It just so happened on that one day in 1967, when they raided that blind pig, they had to call out 2 big buses to arrest all the people that was in the blind pig, because they had about 100 and some people in there. And by the time the buses got back, people that rallied on the street started bricking the police, and the rebellion was on. And that rebellion was the biggest rebellion in American history prior to that. I think the Watts Rebellion after Rodney King went further than that, but until that point, the Detroit Rebellion in '67 was the largest in U.S. history. And I want to say a couple of things about that. There's some things that distinguish the Detroit Rebellion from all the rest of the rebellions. First of all, the Detroit Rebellion was integrated. Blacks and whites were looting and sniping together. And every book you read on the Detroit Rebellion is going to explain the integrated nature of this Detroit Rebellion, especially over there on Trumbull and Forest and that area where everybody was going up and down Grand River taking all the stuff out the stores. The second thing was that in the Detroit Rebellion, we had an assassination within the rebellion, and that's the assassination that's referred to as the Algiers Motel Incident. And the Algiers Motel Incident is a book written by John Hershey called the Algiers Motel Incident. And that's the incident at the Algiers Motel where these 3 white police officers assassinated these 3 young black guys for being with 2 white girls in that Algiers Motel. Now, the Algiers Motel is wiped off the face of the earth and ain't there no more. The book, John Hershey's book, if you go to the Detroit Public Schools in the library, it's gone. You can't find it. It done wiped out the history of the thing. You don't know nothing about it unless somebody tells you. John Hershey wrote the book on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's still sitting in the library. But not the Algiers Motel Incident. You can't hardly get your hands on it. The third thing about it was the amount of people that was arrested in the Detroit Rebellion. They arrested over 7,000 people in the Detroit Rebellion. They arrested so many people that they filled up all the penitentiaries in Michigan. They filled up the Milan, Marquette, all over the place. Jackson, Ionia. I ended up doing 15 days in Ionia State Penitentiary for violation of curfew on the first night. But they arrested so many people that they even arrested people on Belle Isle. See, Belle Isle that you thought was your little island where you go and party and barbecue and stuff on the weekend. Well, that became a jail. They arrested over 500 people on Belle Isle. Matter of fact, we renamed it. We started calling it Belcatraz, after Alcatraz. The island, in the famous prison island out of San Francisco. But all these people was arrested and held in these places until they went to trial. The fourth thing was the amount of ammunition that was fired. Now, Sidney Fine got all this in his book. Listen, the amount, for some reason, they got a way to know how many rounds of ammunition was fired. Over 200,000 rounds of ammunition was fired by the National Guard and the state troopers in the city. They shot up the city. They shot up everything in the city. Little 4-year-old Tanya Blonding was shot and killed through the floor on Euclid and 12th Street with a 50 caliber machine gun. The 82nd Airborne and 101st Airborne only shot 25 times because they were trained troops. Many of them was minorities. They didn't panic under circumstances. We had so many empty shell cases around the city that when the rebellion was over, we picked them up, recased them, drilled a hole in the top and put a rawhide string around them and wore them as necklaces, in response to the rebellion. So everybody that broke out of them jails came out with the afros that high and these big 50 caliber bullets hanging around their necks, you know, as a symbol of the rebellion. The rebellion changed people. People that were ambivalent about the police department before the rebellion was convinced when it was over. You didn't have to argue to nobody about whether or not they had some hatred for the police. They all hated them. You know, and that's the conditions that came out of the rebellion in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I just want to add to that Seti, General Student Seti, talking about the elders didn't do nothing. What is you talking about, Seti? You the one ain't doing nothing, man, but talking loud, saying nothing. You and your punk young pharaoh. This is Black Light. Stay tuned.